Imagine you're at a party. There's music, laughter, maybe some terrible small talk about the weather. And somewhere in that room, there's a person who's perfectly pleasant, smiling, engaging when spoken to, but internally counting down the minutes until they can go home and just breathe. That person isn't rude. They're not broken. They're not secretly miserable. They just chose themselves tonight. And chances are, if you clicked on this video, that person might be you. Now, here's where people get it wrong. Society has this habit of conflating selective with antisocial. If you don't show up to every event, if your inner circle has fewer people than fingers on one hand, if you need a solid 3 business days to mentally prepare for a phone call, people assume something's off. They reach for the word cold or introverted, or worse, they say you think you're better than everyone. But psychology tells a very different story. Let me take you back to a concept that psychologist Robert Cialdini explored when studying social influence and human connection. One of the things that kept emerging in his research was the idea of value through scarcity. The things we guard most carefully, time, attention, trust, become more meaningful precisely because we don't hand them out freely. Selective people aren't withholding connection, they're protecting its quality. Think about it like this. Imagine you have a jar of the most extraordinary honey you've ever tasted. You're not going to drizzle it on every random piece of toast that passes by. You save it for the morning that deserves it. Selective people treat their emotional energy the same way. It's not stinginess, it's curation. And there's actual neuroscience behind this. Research on the social brain, particularly the work done around the prefrontal cortex and the default mode network, suggests that meaningful social connection requires cognitive effort. When we engage deeply with someone, our brain is working hard, predicting their thoughts, mirroring their emotions, building a mental model of who they are. That's not passive. That's one of the most demanding things the human brain does. For people who are neurologically more sensitive to that cost, being selective isn't a choice so much as it's self-preservation. So why do we still misread this as coldness? Part of it is cultural. We live in a world that rewards extroversion visibly. The person who works the room, who has 1,000 Instagram friends, who never misses a happy hour, that person looks socially successful. But looks can be deeply misleading. Psychologist Susan Cain, in her extensive research on introverts, found that many people perform sociability as a kind of armor, going wide rather than deep, spreading themselves thin across dozens of connections that never really nourish them. Selective people, on the other hand, tend to go deep, and depth in human connection is where the real nutrition lives. Here's a question worth sitting with. When was the last time you felt genuinely seen by someone? Not just heard, not just acknowledged, but truly seen, like they understood the specific, peculiar, complicated thing that you are. That feeling is rare, and it's rare precisely because it requires 2 people who are both paying full, undivided attention to the relationship. Selective people create the conditions for that. By narrowing their circle, they widen the quality of what's inside it. Now, there's an important distinction to name here, because selective isn't the same as avoidant. Avoidant attachment, which psychologists describe as a pattern where someone shuts down intimacy out of fear of being hurt or dependent, is actually the opposite of what we're talking about. Avoidant people want connection, but run from it. Selective people are clear-eyed about what they want and make deliberate choices to pursue it on their own terms. One is driven by fear, the other is driven by discernment. That's a meaningful difference. And here's the part that might genuinely surprise you. Studies on friendship and well-being, particularly the long-running Harvard study of adult development, one of the most comprehensive happiness studies ever conducted, consistently found that it wasn't the number of relationships that predicted a good life. It was the quality of a few close ones. The people who reported the deepest satisfaction weren't the most socially active. They were the most socially intentional. Selective people, by nature, tend to live this principle without even trying. So if you're someone who turns down invitations without guilt, who doesn't feel compelled to fill every silence, who sometimes prefers your own company over a crowd, you're not broken.
You're actually operating with a kind of emotional intelligence that the world doesn't always celebrate loudly enough. You understand that your presence is a resource. You understand that not every space deserves your full self, and you've quietly decided that depth is worth more than breadth. The only thing I'd ask you to watch for is this. Make sure the selectivity stays a door that opens for the right people, not a wall that slowly stops opening at all. There's a fine line between protecting your energy and accidentally starving yourself of the connection you actually need. Lean into your people fully when they show up. Let them in like you mean it. And if this resonated with you, if you recognized yourself or someone you love in all of this, drop it in the comments. Tell me what being selective has cost you and what it's given you. Those conversations are always the best ones. I'll see you in the next one.